In 476 AD, the Western Roman Empire officially ceased to exist. The last emperor, Romulus Augustulus, was deposed by a Germanic commander. Rome, the eternal city, fell into decline. Medieval Europe began. History books mark this as a great ending of human civilization. But what's rarely emphasized is that when Rome fell, another city watched from across the water, already Roman for over a century. A city with Roman laws, institutions, armies, and an emperor behind walls no enemy had breached. A city of 500,000 people, 10 times the size of anything in Western Europe, with running water, a market economy, civil service, and a literary culture. This city was Constantinople. It did not fall in 476 AD, but 977 years later, in 1453, to Ottoman cannon. For nearly 1,000 years, Constantinople stood as the largest, wealthiest, most sophisticated city in the Christian world. It called itself Roman. Its emperor, the Emperor of the Romans. Its people, Romaioi, in a language that was Greek. This is the story of how one city kept an empire alive for 1,000 years, and what it looked, felt, and functioned like. To understand Constantinople's survival, we must begin with geography. Its location is not merely convenient. It's strategically perfect. The city occupies a triangular peninsula where Europe meets Asia, where the Black Sea meets the Mediterranean. The main land route narrows to its most defensible point. To the north, the Golden Horn, a natural, protected harbor. To the south, the Sea of Marmara. The western land approach was protected by the most formidable city walls in the medieval world. Emperor Constantine I deliberately chose this site in 330 AD, expanding the existing Greek city of Byzantium. He understood its offerings, control over straits, dominance over trade routes, and a defensible position against larger forces. Constantinople in 1000 AD, our focal period, densely built across this same peninsula. At its peak, the city covered 14 square kilometers within the Theodosian walls, built in the early 5th century. They were a system, outer, middle, and inner walls, the tallest over 12 meters, separated by walkways and a wide moat. 96 towers stood on the inner wall alone. No army breached these walls by direct assault for over 1,000 years. Within those walls, the city was organized around a central spine, the Mise, from the Golden Gate eastward. The Mise was colonnaded, sheltering pedestrians and commerce, lined with shops, workshops, churches, and monuments. Modern Istanbul covers this ground. Hagia Sophia still stands. The hippodrome's outline is preserved. The Golden Gates remains exist. The geography is the same. The city built on it is utterly transformed. Constantinople in 1000 AD was a city of stone, brick, and marble on a scale unmatched in the Christian world. The defining structure was the Hagia Sophia, constructed under Justinian I, completed in 537 AD. It was the largest cathedral for nearly 1,000 years. Its central dome, 55 meters high, was an engineering marvel. Procopius described it as suspended from heaven by a golden chain. The interior was covered in gold mosaic and polished stone. In 1000, Hagia Sophia was 463 years old, still dominant, functioning as the principal cathedral, receiving emperors. The Imperial Palace complex, the Great Palace, occupied an enormous area on the southeastern tip of the peninsula. It was an accumulation of structures, audience halls, apartments, chapels, throne rooms, gardens, and ceremonial spaces. The Chrysotriclinus, the Golden Reception Hall, was the primary throne room, with the mosaic of Christ above the imperial throne. Foreign ambassadors recorded staged magnificence, mechanical golden lions that roared, golden birds that sang. These were not myths. Lightprand of Cremona documented them. The Byzantine court deployed ceremonial power with precision. Beyond imperial structures, the city's residential and commercial fabric was dense and varied. Wealthy aristocrats lived in large private palaces, walled compounds with gardens and chapels. The middle classes occupied modest but well-built stone and brick structures. The poorest lived in crowded wooden buildings. The city had functioning public infrastructure unmatched in Western Europe. Aqueducts brought fresh water. Enormous underground cisterns, like the Basilica cistern, stored reserve water. It still exists beneath modern Istanbul. Constantinople in 1000 AD was an extraordinarily large city by its era's standards. Population estimates range from 300,000 to 500,000 people at its peak. Paris in 1000 had perhaps 20,000 people. London, 10,000 to 15,000. Rome, 20,000 to 50,000. Constantinople was not merely larger, it was in a different category entirely. The social structure was complex, reflecting its Roman administrative inheritance. At the apex sat the emperor, the Basileus. The emperor in 1000 was Basil II, a formidable ruler, who reigned from 976 to 1025. Constantinople was his capital, source of revenues, and administrative center of an empire stretching from Italy to Armenia. Below the emperor, the Byzantine court maintained an elaborate hierarchy of titles and offices. This was a functional administrative system managing taxation, military, judiciary, and diplomatic relations. The middle tier was substantial and economically active. Merchants from various communities operated in markets and the harbor. Skilled craftsmen organized into guilds, their regulations documented in the Book of the Eparch. At the base were laborers, servants, and slaves. Slavery was legal, though their individual lives are largely invisible. Constantinople's economy in 1000 was the most sophisticated in the Christian world. Built on its trade routes, the city sat astride the route between the Black Sea and the Mediterranean, taxing virtually all maritime trade. The Commercian, a 10% commercial tax, funded the imperial army, court, church, and infrastructure. The Golden Horn Harbor was the commercial engine, accommodating vessels from across the known world. Byzantine merchants traded in silk, grain, wine, oil, metals, timber, furs, spices, and slaves. The harbor district was lined with warehouses, workshops, and foreign merchants operating under imperial license. The Byzantine monetary system, with the gold nomisma, was the most stable and trusted currency in the medieval world. This stability reflected the state's understanding of currency reliability, giving merchants a structural advantage. The contrast with Western Europe is sharp. Paris and London had limited monetary economies. Constantinople conducted long-distance international trade, regulated by a sophisticated legal framework. It generated revenues for professional armies and maintained a marble city of hundreds of thousands. This was not a different degree of development. It was a different order of civilization. Chapter 5: Political Power and Imperial Government. The political system of Constantinople in 1000 was a direct descendant of Roman imperial government, modified and Christianized, yet continuous with its origins. The emperor held supreme authority in military, judicial, legislative, and religious domains. In theory, imperial power had no constitutional limits. In practice, the emperor's authority relied on the army's loyalty, the aristocracy's acquiescence, and the church's support or non-opposition. Byzantine history saw recurring palace coups, rebellions, and instability. This showed the gap between theoretical imperial absolutism and its practical fragility. Emperor Basil II, 1000, navigated this system skillfully. He survived rebellion, crushed the Bulgarian Empire, and consolidated power over the aristocracy. The administrative system, centered in Constantinople, operated through provinces called themes, each governed by a military strategos. Constantinople's administration maintained records, collected taxes, and coordinated policy across vast territories, including the Balkans, Greece, Anatolia, and Italy. Documents were produced in Greek, the administrative language, since the 7th century. Yet, the legal tradition remained codified Roman law. Constantinople's diplomacy was unmatched. The imperial court maintained formal relations with the Abbasid and Fatimid caliphates, Kievan, Rus, and Western European kingdoms. Foreign ambassadors were received with elaborate ceremony, housed in designated residences, and managed with a careful mixture of generosity and controlled access. Chapter 6: Religion, Culture, and the Orthodox World. In Constantinople in 1000, Christianity was not just an aspect of life, it was the framework for all political, social, cultural, and personal life. The emperor was God's vicegerent on earth, the divinely appointed ruler of the Christian Roman Empire, with specific religious responsibilities. The relationship between imperial and ecclesiastical authority was complex, but the premise of a coordinated partnership was largely unquestioned. The Ecumenical Patriarchate of Constantinople was the senior institution of Orthodox Christianity, second only to the Bishop of Rome. In 1000, the relationship between Constantinople and Rome was strained, but not yet formally broken. The Great Schism was still 54 years away. The city had hundreds of churches, monasteries, and charitable institutions. Monasteries were vital, controlling property, providing education, and operating hospitals. They also produced manuscripts and served as primary repositories of the Greek literary and philosophical tradition, which Western Europe had largely lost. In 1000, texts of ancient Greek literature, philosophy, science, and history were copied, studied, and commented upon in Constantinople's monasteries. This intellectual tradition preserved and engaged with classical inheritance. Many texts reached Western Europe through Byzantine transmission, fueling the Renaissance. Constantinople's cultural life also encompassed the Hippodrome, the great chariot racing stadium, seating perhaps 80,000 spectators. By 1000, chariot racing declined, but the Hippodrome remained a site of imperial ceremony, public celebration, and political theater. It was decorated with monuments from across the ancient world, like the Serpent Column and the Egyptian obelisk, demonstrating imperial reach and continuity. Chapter 7 Defense, Military, and the Walls. The military dimension of Constantinople's survival was inseparable from its physical form. The city endured due to its extraordinary defensive configuration. The Theodosian walls, completed in 413 AD, were the most sophisticated urban fortification in the medieval world, repaired and reinforced over centuries. Their triple wall system created defensive depth, making them insurmountable without prolonged siege or fundamental technological advantage. The walls were built of alternating brick and stone, a technique providing remarkable flexibility, absorbing projectile force rather than shattering. Sea walls protected the Golden Horn and Marmara coastlines. The Golden Horn could be sealed by the Great Chain, preventing hostile fleets from entering. Beyond fortifications, the Byzantine military in 1000 was a sophisticated professional force. The Tagmata were elite regiments stationed around Constantinople. The Varangian Guard, established by Basil II, provided a loyal personal bodyguard of Norse and later Anglo-Saxon warriors, documented in art. Byzantine military technology included Greek fire, an incendiary substance projected through siphons on warships, burning on water. Its deployment against Arab naval assaults in 674-678 AD and 717-718 AD was decisive, repelling sieges that might have ended the empire centuries earlier. In 1000, Greek fire remained a technological deterrent against maritime attack, which no enemy had been able to replicate or counter effectively. Conclusion. From Roman Empire to modern Istanbul, Constantinople in 1000 AD was not a relic. It was the Roman Empire, smaller, Greek-speaking, but institutionally, legally, and culturally continuous with Augustus Caesar's civilization. That continuity ended on May 29, 1453, when Ottoman forces under Sultan Mehmed II breached the Theodosian walls after a 53-day siege. The last Byzantine emperor, Constantine Palaiologos, died fighting on the walls. The city became the capital of the Ottoman Empire. The Hagia Sophia was converted to a mosque. The Ecumenical Patriarchate survived, but with dramatically reduced authority. What the Ottomans inherited was not a ruin. It was a battered but magnificent city, its physical monuments still standing, its harbor functional. Mehmed II understood what he had taken. He called himself Kaiser Caesar of Rome, and made Istanbul the capital of his empire. Walk through Istanbul today, and the layers are visible. The Hagia Sophia still dominates the skyline of the old peninsula. The Hippodrome's Egyptian obelisk still stands in Sultanahmet Square. The Theodosian walls still stand along the western edge of the old city. The Basilica Cistern is open to visitors. The Golden Horn is still a harbor. Constantinople in 1000 teaches us about conditions allowing civilizations to endure. It faced sieges, plagues, civil wars, and economic crises. What kept it going was geographic advantage, institutional sophistication, economic productivity, military investment, and the capacity to adapt. The Byzantines called themselves Romans until the last day. They were not wrong. Their inherited institutions transformed, but the threat of continuity was real. When the Western Roman Empire fell in 476 AD, it was not the end of Rome. It was the beginning of Rome's longest chapter, a chapter written in Greek, on the shores of the Bosphorus, behind walls that held for 1,000 years. That chapter ended in 1453, but its physical traces, legal inheritance, religious institutions, and cultural legacy are pervasive in the modern world. Constantinople did not merely survive the fall of Rome. For 1,000 years, it was Rome shaping civilization in ways we still live with today.